Good morning.
Good morning.
You know what? I'm gonna close this. That's annoying.
Kill that lamp also, please.
Today is Sunday, December 10, 2023. Let's set our intention and make aspiration by saying the four immeasurables prayer. Yesterday, Garchen Rinpoche gave a teaching on immeasurable love and talked, and basically it was about the four immeasurables. That's online now. It was live yesterday, but you could find it at the Garchen Buddhist Institute YouTube. Definitely worth checking out. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. I also really, for those of you who've been here regularly or more than once or a lot or even new, I guess, I really encourage you to watch, and we talk about him a lot in this class, Zansar Khyentse Rinpoche. He has a teaching on YouTube from last month. It's called 7 Points or 7 Steps of Mind Training. And I think it's really accessible, very much connected to stuff we've been doing here. Really essential. Some of the things he talks about, which I thought were really good, is like things like we're not meditating to become good meditators. You know, we've spoken about that a little bit. I mean, we've gotten a lot of that from him. That's why we talk about it. But how meditation is about cultivating a certain mindfulness and working with our own mind so that we can bring that into our daily life, so that becomes, you know, how we interact with the world and other people and our loved ones and our community and ourselves, through working with the mind. He encourages short sessions of working with the mind, at least in the beginning, but many sessions. By session, he doesn't mean just on the cushion in the formal practice of your morning or evening, but also, you know, through the course of your day, having moments of, you know, looking into the mind, seeing what the mind is doing and how it's working, letting go of certain fixed thoughts, objects, objects of, you know, fixation or attraction, repulsion, things like that. Really good teaching, and I think many of you would get a lot out of it. Okay, I have something to read. This is from Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Dilgo Khyentse. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche is one of the great Buddhist masters of the last century. Was one of the teachers of Dzongchen Khyentse Rinpoche. Also, someone that the Dalai Lama would go for specific teachings. You know, ask for specific teachings from and empowerments and transmissions. If you can Google his books, they're really worth. Heart Treasure of the Enlightened One is a really great one, but anything by him. There's also a documentary about him that's really worth seeing called Brilliant Moon. Very inspiring. When you encounter external circumstances, whether favorable or adverse. And that's important right there. Because he's talking about external circumstances, whether they're favorable or adverse. And not just saying, and you're not just talking about the bad things, right? When you encounter external circumstances, whether favorable or adverse, turn your mind inward and apply mindfulness so that you are not influenced by your habitual tendencies. Otherwise, each time you give in to attachment and are seduced by beautiful forms, fragrant scents, or sweet melodies, your afflictive emotions will grow. You will be going in exactly the opposite direction to the Dharma. So instead, develop great faith in the teachings, cultivate a yearning to practice them, apply yourself diligently day and night, remember clearly what you should and should not be doing, keep an eye on what your body, speech, and mind are doing, tethering them with a rope of vigilance. In this way, you will tame the wild elephant that is your mind. Maintain your practice year after year, generating ever greater diligence and constantly checking your progress and experience. In this way, realization will enter your being, and when that happens, all your deluded perceptions will be liberated by themselves. And we have to remember, it's not saying that, something pleasant, a pleasant, person or attraction to, or like he said, melodies or things, it's not saying that those are bad or should be rejected. It's a matter of where fixation becomes an attachment and addiction, or being able to appreciate something of beauty and leaving it where it is when it's finished, or when you're through beholding it, rather than it becomes some obsession that takes over your life, or that you become fixated on, or that you can't be happy without it, or it's more, we're talking about those things. We're not talking about kind of like deprivation or some kind of asceticism, where you're depriving yourself of enjoying everything. That's not what he's saying. It's more the attachment to those things uh, where we get into trouble. Victoria's going to speak for a bit. Do you want to now or after
Do
we
that
sit?
after the meditation.
Okay, so I encourage you, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, any of his books, Zantsar Khyentse Rinpoche. Now, these names you could find on our Solidago Productions website, where we recommend teachers and books. Zantsar Khyentse Rinpoche, 7 points or 7 steps to mind training. I forget which one it is.
7-point mindfulness training. It's
Is that what he calls it?
It's called Lojong mind training.
But he called it something different on that teaching, I think.
But that's what he.
But you can. He also said something that was very funny, but I can't.
I want to use that later.
Oh, okay. And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, any of his books, and Garchen Rinpoche's teaching on immeasurable love from yesterday. Good, are all great stuff for you. Those of you who are interested in taking your study and practice further. Okay, I'm not doing a review today. We don't do that every week, because most of you are here again and again. So let's get into our posture. And the first thing you can do always is just let all the tension go in your body and mind, and just like settle into, the thing that happens as the more and more you do this, your body and mind kind of automatically, when you sit, and prepare to meditate, your body and mind start to train itself and become familiar with that position and the idea of settling. So you can let yourself settle further into that, knowing you're calming everything down, knowing you're going to, focus your attention on the mind itself. The thing about the breath, is that what you wanted to say?
No.
So in this mind training, Zantsar Khyentse, he does talk about following the breath, paying attention to the breath as it goes in and out. And he said, well, why the breath? Why are we watching the breath? Why are we not counting our fingers or something like that? Which is also something you could probably do as a meditation or something like that. Something that just gets away from the, thoughts, reacting to external stimulus or the mind stories and something to kind of bring the mind to one point. And he said, because the breath is the vibration of the mind, which I had never heard before. The breath is the vibration of the mind, which I thought was kind of cool. So as you settle and focus on your breath in and out, and just relax the body. And we're using the mind to see what the mind is doing, which sounds contradictory, but it's not really. And as thoughts arise, which they will, we notice it. We notice the thought. We get a sense of it. And then we leave it alone. By leave it alone, I mean, we don't reject it and say that's bad thought, I shouldn't be thinking, bad me, nor do we, as our tendency is, follow the story of the thought. And by that I mean, that person got me mad yesterday. Why did he do that? We have a pattern of behavior between us that allows him to do the thought is connected to a whole chain of events before and after it usually. So we're just leaving it where it is. You can watch it dissipate into the sky like a cloud. The sky being the limitless, stainless clarity of mind. The thought being the cloud that has arisen from that, from nowhere else but that, and dissolves nowhere else but into that spacious mind, leaving no damage, no trace. Great. Let me just see if there was one other thing I wanted to say before Victoria. Oh, okay, this is cool. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche, really amazing teacher. Time is very precious. Our relationships with one another are like a chance meeting of two strangers in a parking lot. They look at each other and smile. That is all there is between them. They leave and never see each other again. That is what life is, just a moment, a passing, and then it is gone. If you understand this, there is no time to fight, there is no time to argue, there is no time to hurt one another. Whether you think about it in terms of humanity, nations, communities, or individuals, there is no time for anything less than truly appreciating the brief interaction we have with one another. Time is very precious. Do not wait until you are dying to understand your spiritual nature. If you do it now, you will discover resources of kindness and compassion you didn't know you had. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche. Okay.
And this quote Michael just read kind of is a really good introduction to revisit again what we were talking about last week from a teaching of Eric Kunzang Pema on the Dream Bardo, where he says that the world on its relative level, this reality of the self, of others, this idea, this, our perceptions, our experiences, this is a relative level. So we compared it to movies. But the most important thing in the movie theater, as he says, is the screen. That is an analogy for our basic nature. That is our awareness. Without that open awareness, that is often referred to as emptiness, because it's not a something, it's the space of where anything can take place, the empty screen. It is another word that's often used is dharmata, the space of phenomena where things arise. It is referred to as prajnaparamita. All of these beautiful words are used for this screen, and screen, of course, is just a metaphor for this infinite, unarisen, stainless awareness. It is the space of awareness within which moment to moment things, chance meetings at the parking lot, interacting with one another, etc., can take place. The screen is the basic state. It is where the projections and movements of consciousness can arise, where we can act and direct and edit our movies, the play of life. Because life are moment-to-moment experiences and projections. They are projections because they are so unique to us. The only thing that is stable and that is shared are labels, names, but the films that appear on the screen of our awareness are so unique. There's not a single cloud, there's not a single thing, a flower in this world that we can experience in an identical way. We can call it one thing, we can give it one single label that we socially share, but the experience, which is all that we have, is experience. Because when we say perception, we mean experience. And experiences can be very, very complex. And the films are made up of these series of experiences. Consciousness on that level, the film consciousness, so to say, what is projected on the screen, is like a river. It is always flowing. It is consciousness moment to moment, creating this narrative, creating the scenario. And on the screen, many, many films appear. And in these films, The self is kind of like the key player, and that self is also uh, has so many different variations and shades from moment to moment. It alters itself. There's one kind of a self that is a father. There's another kind of a self that is a person who enters an office and in a work environment. There's another person who is a friend, another person who's a spouse. All these sets of identities that kind of fall into the identity that is loosely we hold by the momentary flow of awareness as this river. All these movies are projected onto the empty screen. And Eric Pemakunzang asks us please to pay attention and to reconnect with the screen. It's the same thing that John Sarkiense says, you know, through the day of this relative events of all these movies playing along and going on, take a moment and pause and reconnect with the screen, reconnect with basic awareness, reconnect with our basic nature. Uh, not just keep going through all these versions of the selves and the environments that are projected on the screen, all these movies. So, uh, when we understand that all these projections are happening on the screen of awareness that never wavers and never changes, never arises, never ceases, unlike the films that come and go and come and go and are played, new scenarios coming and going all the time. Many, many things start to happen. In Buddhism, we call these movies, we call them dreams and or illusions. And it applies to our whole relative condition, because everything that we experience here and now, besides the stability of the screen, our basic awareness, the movies, the projections, the relative level of life, in Buddhism is referred to as a dream state or illusory state. And we are encouraged to start to experience our relative reality on that level. It's very, very important for us to understand that what is happening as what we experience as life or reality on that level is this moving river of projections and experiences. And there are many benefits of understanding and relating to life this way. The key and the most important thing is, we get this wisdom of knowing there's the screen and then there are the movies. And we are the ones who write the movies, we act in them, we edit them, and we direct them. We're the content of the film. We're the maker of the film. We project the film, we score it, we write it, we direct it. That identity that happens on the screen, the main actor, the self, is constantly changing, adapting to different situations, acting like this with this person from whom you need a favor. You can, become one kind of a person, and then someone you call your enemy, your identity becomes very different and sharp and very, filled with different kind of energy toward that person. But when we understand that these are all dreams and there's no time to get fixated and hardened in these moments, because the film is like this river. The river never stops. And kind of to ponder the question, is it the same river, or is it constantly different? Well, it's both. There is the sense of the river and there is the sense of the movement. And so the screen is the sense of the river, the basic nature of awareness, the empty nature of awareness, and the movement is a projecting of all these dreams. What happens when we start to experience physically, like the texture of this dreaming reality as a dream or as a film, many benefits happen. And actually, it's kind of like when the wisdom aspect starts to take root in our life, because it is a core ignorance to think that these movies are ultimately real. There's nothing ultimately real. The river is always moving. You step into it, you have this movie right now, but seconds later already that movie has passed your feet, has passed your ankles, has passed your, it's already gone. However, the movement is something that's always happening, and that is also important to remember. That's the relative aspect of our life, the movie that's always going on. What happens is that when we know that, movie or dream state is how we, engage and perceive our life, the grasping loosens, the grasping to the self and the grasping to the other content to which the self relates. When we know that we're the filmmakers, we can alter and change the way we relate to objects in the world. We can also even change the way we relate to ourselves. That thick grasping that thinks all this is real starts to loosen, and we start to have more moments of wisdom and less moments of ignorance. Or we can kind of have wisdom encapsulating the ignorance and being relaxed inside it. That means that, if habitually we keep seeing the same person to whom we relate as an enemy, we can relax that because we know it's just a movie we created. I was watching this tremendous teaching. I forgot the name of the neurologist, but she was the lecture. The talk was called "The Brain Keeps the Score," and the basic premise of the conversation of this neurologist was to say she's dedicated 30, 40 years to being a neuroscientist, and her studies were particularly of how trauma is stored. And she said trauma is not stored in the body, meaning it's also not stored in the brain. What happens, when we have habitual trauma, PTSD, et cetera, is that the brain looks and projects the world as a threatening environment. When I say brain, of course, I mean first mind, our intentionality, then it goes into the brain, and from the brain, the neurological impulses are happening. We get tense, our breath changes, et cetera. All that trickles down from our mind, projecting the environment as something threatening, or seeing that person as an enemy. Your body starts to change, neurological responses arise. But all that is, what she was saying is that the emphasis being on we project the world as that threatening environment, and then we keep reacting to it over and over and over like that. And that's what trauma is, us projecting the world in a particular way and reliving it all the time. And we've all have had incidents in our life, we know, which are very difficult to distance and kind of soften. When something traumatic happened to us, the mind likes to go back to it and relive it over and over and over again. It becomes a fixation. Same thing happens in addiction. We project something, something of desire or anger. This is what we call in Buddhism habitual patterns. Habitual patterns are formed by attachment, by placing the self into a particular kind of situation and projecting it, and then reacting and responding to it over and over and over again. And so when we start to become more aware of the screen and the films, we can loosen that bond. We can know that we can rewrite. We can project our environment not as a threatening place. We can start to change the projection, the narrative, the film, and inside it, the sense of who we are starts to change as well. The second big takeaway is we realize that we are the filmmakers. It's not like I go into an office and this is it. No, it's my projection. This is it, is my projection. It's my movie. I can rewrite that environment. I can look at it differently. And even if it's a very difficult and a tight space, I can step away to the empty screen and have the patience and the awareness to know it is a momentary arising. What seems to us as so solid is our fixation on something. It is us projecting the same thing and reliving, regurgitating the experience, like having a meal and having heartburn for hours and hours and hours. But when we understand that we create the film ourselves, we can start to we can begin to know the freedom of either waiting it out and little by little, through patience and perseverance, we can start to change the narrative. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche, in that teaching on 7-point mind training, makes a great, brings up a great Buddhist parable, and he says, a stupid man will do bad, unvirtuous things and go to hell as a result of karma.
He uses the word idiot.
An idiot does virtuous things or good things and goes, bad things and goes to hell, and that's karma. An idiot who is a good idiot does good things or virtuous things and goes to heaven, and a wise man knows the empty state of both. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche says, and a wise man transcends both. What he means is, what is transcend? It's knowing that these are movies. It's connecting to the dream. It's knowing that this relative level of reality, standing in the movement of the play of awareness, momentary awareness, is just projections. It's like standing in the river. And so loosening it up and bringing the wisdom state of being aware, reconnecting to the empty screen, reconnecting to knowing that dreams are our projections. Knowing life as a dream state is a prerequisite also for a dream state practice. In Buddhism, dream state practice is a huge thing. It is huge because at the moment of death, if we have not habituated ourselves to understanding this playground as a dream state, we panic, we become overwhelmed by our emotions, and based on the emotions we are experiencing during that time, we will be dragged to different states of rebirth. Some of us, of course, and not all of us are Buddhists who have taken refuge and who have, really taken these ideas as something that's, pivotal, but some of us have. And it is said in Buddhist teachings that at the moment of state and at the time of death, if we have not habituated ourselves to experiencing things as a dream state, we lose all control, and emotions take over and drag us to all kinds of difficult and states of suffering. And just to end this, and so, practicing, we're supposed to practice, it's technically it's called the practice of illusory body. We experience ourselves, our body, and the environment as something loose, dream-like, and that's why it's called illusory. What I'm asking, when I'm using the metaphor of being in the movie theater, being in life is like being in the movie theater. As practitioners, we're kind of aware that we're sitting in the movie theater and we're watching everything, like these meetings and parking lots, loosely. And as that, we're not saying this is so, that person is bad, this person is like, or bad or good. We're transcending that. We're going beyond that by knowing we're in a movie theater of our own projections, of our own making. And so we are cultivating the capacity to write the movies, to wither the storms, to wait them out, to become gentler, to become kinder, to become patient, and to go beyond these judgment statements, good, bad, etc., because, they're like such a wasteful, wasteful of our energy time. When we're little, when we're babies, we're said fire is bad, this is good, etc. We learn things as triggers for certain behaviors, but as adults, by that I mean practitioners, we bring awareness into every moment of life. We're never saying that person is good or redeemable or anything like that. No, we know as film goers on being aware of the screen that we're creating that situation together in the dance with that person. That's the movement, the river of projection on the screen. And as that, we also know we can change, at least from our side. We can only change ourselves. We never ever as practitioners dream or spend time on trying to change anyone else. It isn't our karma to change anyone else. It isn't within the realm of our abilities. The only change we can bring about, how we can change the stream, this river passing through our ankles and through our knees, is that we change ourselves. And I would like to end with a beautiful quote. I'm just paraphrasing. We watched a documentary of this nun going on this very kind of difficult journey to what the in Buddhist Tibetan Buddhist world is called the 24 sacred places. But anyway, she comes to this monastery and has an interview with this nun abbot, and this woman, this nun, who's dedicated her life to leading these women to these kind of highest states of practice. Uh, she says, I'm not a scholar, I am not this geshe, I don't know much. But she said, experientially, when you get to this place of non-conceptual space, when you get to that space of beyond past non-conceptuality, she said, there in that space, because that's an experience, that's the place our awareness experiences itself in. She said, there in that space past this conceptuality, there is nothing but love. And this is, as practitioners, we all hope to get to that state. That's why we actually sit to shamatha practice. That's why we engage in vipassana practice, to understand the empty nature of the conceptual movement is still taking place on the screen of conceptual awareness that doesn't arise and cease. We know that the clouds can only arise in the space of the sky. All these metaphors lead us to that. And that beautiful statement by this abbot, who said, when you arrive to that space, because all practice is only geared, all the methods that we talk about, all these conceptual helpers to help us guide based on our dispositions and mental capacity, be to that non-conceptual, beyond the conceptual, beyond the relative state, to that state of mind, to the direct experience of that state of mind. For her to say, when you arrive to that state, when you have that direct experience, there is nothing but love. And she said, we, meaning she and all her nuns, wish to attain this state only in order to look out and to hold with that love within that state all sentient beings, and that's I just first of all, that's Buddhahood, and that people can dedicate their lives to that. That is what that quote that Michael just quoted, but by Chagdud Rinpoche, there's no time to do anything else. So being loose with the movies, being loose with the relative state of our reality, holding back on judgments, holding back on harsh things, not jumping and suffocating others because we don't agree with them on this conceptual level, knowing that in that beyond in that state beyond conceptuality, we are all identical. That is our mother. That is the ultimate state of all of us. And never forgetting, having that patience for ourselves and having that patience for all sentient beings is the only really meaningful thing for which this supreme human vessel is given. And our vessel is supreme, because in our in this particular life as a human being, we can practice Dharma, we can practice the subtle body, we can practice dream yoga, and we can make this very, very meaningful. and as we should. And I hope it helps.
Thank you. We have answer questions. There's a toolbar on the Zoom with Q&A. You can ask a question. Books and names you mentioned on the Solidago Productions website. There's the books and except for Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche, Chagdud, capital Tulku, Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche. Zancha Kensei Dogo Kensei, that should be on the Solidago website.
May I also mention one more thing, please?
Yeah.
You know, we have to also be honest with ourselves of where we are, our state of capacity. So when we're beginners and we're in difficult situations, we have to know that, be aware of that, know that our capacity is still very, very limited. We walk away as not to engage in harsh speech and, you know, being triggered and etc. As our capacity ripens, we can engage with those states on different levels. The highest capacity are the bodhisattvas. They intentionally go into difficult states in order to benefit difficult beings who abide so much of their time in states of anger and habitual emotion, which is very thick. You know, in Buddhism, we often call that the demon. The demon of affliction. Affliction is created by habitual states and imprints. And so, being aware of where we are, knowing if we can like endure a difficult situation. Sometimes we have to walk away if we know we're going to be triggered and just, fall into it with our own habitual patterns. Or if we can remain in it and kind of be tender, at least listen and see the other person being afflicted and wait it out and kind of like give them that space and then, decide how we're going to act in that to benefit them. Or that we're, warriors that are really, really capable of like, dealing with that and benefiting. The important thing is the emphasis is the right intention. That's what has to be the guiding thing.
I understand that we are not to form fixations and obsessions. However, I'm having a very hard time lately not obsessing over what is happening in Palestine. As a Buddhist, aren't I meant to notice and concern myself with the suffering in the world? At one point, am I too attached or fixated? I'm going to break down what you're saying sentence by sentence here because, you have to really focus on, the different things that you're relating to and be specific. We're not to form fixations and obsessions. Just that sentence, you have to say, we are not to form. Well, remember, Buddhism is not a very dogmatic philosophy. You know what I mean? It's not saying don't do this. Well, you can do this, but it's going to kind of go counter towards this open spaciousness of mind that we're trying to cultivate, right? It's not saying it's wrong to do that. That's what we do. That's kind of what gets us into the position of not being able to have this openness of mind, have this presence and mindfulness that we're talking about. Now, you're having a hard time lately not obsessing over what is happening. The obsession, now, aren't I meant to notice and concern myself with the suffering in the world? Of course, not just in other countries, but in your own household, on your block, in your neighborhood. But what do you mean by concern yourself, right? And you say, at one point, am I getting too attached or fixated? Well, how do you want to concern yourself? Meaning, how is it productive? How is it effective? Do you want to protest, maybe? If you feel you lend your voice because you feel there's injustice in the world, absolutely. Do you want to vote? Do you want to support a candidate that's going to be more in agreement with how you think the world, things should be run on a political level? Of course. Do you want, if it's something in your neighborhood, do you want to be part of a community board? There's ways of being engaged without just sitting there going, sitting at home obsessing over, injustice, atrocities, or things like that. Because if you're sitting all day just thinking, this is horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible, well, that's not doing anything except your mind just being obsessed with that and not attending to what's going on. So there's a difference between, we've talked about this many, many, many times in this class. Detachment doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means not connecting in a way that's just reactive, where you're kind of succumbing to emotions, where you're being dictated by your own emotions, which is your own habitual tendencies and karma, where you're trying to see some kind of more spacious way of interacting, right? Someone who's not a Buddhist, who's a friend of mine, who was interested in Buddhism because he felt he had big issues with anger, uncontrollable anger that could possibly and may have possibly resulted in violence. And I sent him a book, and he was very interested in the teachings. And he said he had an incident where he saw a man abusing a dog, and he's done a lot of rescue work with dogs, so he has a particular affection for dogs, and he intervened. And he said, I guess that was wrong from a Buddhist point of view. And I said, Buddhism doesn't mean you just sit there and observe and watch everything going on. If you're presented with a situation, you may be put into a situation where you have to intervene. Allowing abuse to happen in front of you and you're just saying, I'm detached. That's not Buddhism. That's that isolationism, being detached from that doesn't mean completely disengage. You may be in a position where you're saving a life or you're teaching a lesson. Maybe he taught this guy never to abuse an animal again because it's wrong. I don't know specifically what he did, but he intervened in the situation. So where wisdom comes in, and wisdom comes from, practice and the teachings and the connection to the teachers, wisdom where you can start to discern what is our habitual tendencies and what we're aspiring to, with that cultivation, we'll have better discernment over, how to engage and how to act. So, I mean, I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's important to make those distinctions. I don't know if you want to add to that.
It's very, very important to become very clear with yourself whether you're enjoying being angry or you're being possessed by anger, and whether that is something of a habitual pattern. Being concerned is not the same. And then again, what Michael said, so within the capacity of action, what can I do now? It's just making sure that the activity is also not based on an afflicted emotion such as anger. It is that the action also comes from the right place of a wisdom aspect, of the right motivation, right action, right thought. Just being brutally honest with oneself. Do I have, because so many times things happen in the world and they kind of trigger like very base things in ourselves as well as good things. So it's separating the one from the other, making sure we're, not coming from a polluted place that is often suitable to something that we habituated internally, making sure that the right action follows from the right speech and from the right thought, correct manifestations of body, speech, and mind, separating, the poison from the purity as much as possible.
Is it emptiness that creates the interconnectedness? Yes, but interconnectedness is the way things are. Uh, Buddhism ultimately really is about understanding our true nature and finding ways to live in that, with that, understanding that. Interconnectedness is the true nature of things, right? We can see things as very compartmentalized from our own point of view, But the reality is, listen, there's no better example of interconnectedness than the pandemic. 2020, whatever happened, either it leaked from a lab or there was an infected animal that a human got made contact with somewhere in China, possibly, probably. And then months later, the entire planet went into a, you know, lockdown, shutdown, economies shutting down. Um, and that's from a tiny, tiny microscopic uh, bacteria or whatever, virus. Interconnected is the state of things, right? I mean, the sun shine. I mean, if the sun one day decides to shut off, there's no Earth. You know what I mean? Um, Interconnectedness is the way things are. Is what we are. You know, just us sitting here having this experience, there's causes and conditions and involvements of minds and beings that we don't even take into consideration, like who invented the computer and the Zoom program, and the Instagram that allowed this to be promoted with, and who built this phone that you saw this class on. I mean, there's this web of causes and conditions and people and thoughts and minds that have allowed us to have this experience. And that happens every day, every moment of every day. You know, that's just the nature of things. And emptiness, which I've always hated that word because it's a translation of the word shunyata, which is much more, I think, accurate. Is that nothing is fixed. It's empty of inherent existence. We exist interdependently. We exist because of dependent arising. We're not an island unto ourselves.
Ultimately, we also have to let go of the concept of emptiness, that it's not another label. What that is an experience of this infinite openness where infinite interconnections happen. I mean, and as everything on a relative level are parts of other things. We're molecules, we're oxygen, etc., etc. What I wear, what I breathe, what I do, what I am. I mean, everything. It's just, everything I engage with. I pick up a piece of paper. I'm infinitely connected to all those kinds of things that allow me to hold that piece of paper, etc., etc. It's very, it should bring about, the vastness of understanding how things arise, should make us have a lot more kindness, a lot more awareness, and freedoms, of course. But nothing can arise of itself. That's why, we talk about emptiness, is because anything that arises is made of other things. And of course, it takes place in the space of awareness, and that's, shunyata refers to that infinite space of capacity.
I am not political. I am not involved. I am to myself and still feel connected to it all. I ask you, am I disconnected from others, or am I disconnected from self? I mean, it's hard for me to answer that because I don't know you and I don't know your situation. And you don't have to be political. Um, you don't have you can be as engaged as you want, or not. You know what I mean? That's up to you. You don't have to be involved necessarily if you want, but you are on this planet and you are having an experience of a life in the moment. And uh, you may be someone who lives in the mountains and there's not another human being for 3 miles, and so most of your life is spent in seclusion. That doesn't mean you're uh, a selfish person. It could be, or it could be, you're someone who, that's the life you've chosen. Um, so are you disconnected from others? You have to answer that for yourself. How do you engage when you do engage with others? How do you engage? Do you ignore the fact that you're having an experience with someone else? Is it all about you? Do you come first all the time? Are you greedy? Are you stingy? Are you not generous? Are you not kind? Are you not patient? Those are the things you have to ask yourself. Being political doesn't mean you're a good person per se. You know what I mean? A lot of people hide. their own anger and aggression and resentments and things behind some kind of political cause, a political belief, and things like that, and feel like they're on the right side. Everyone feels like they're on the right side, and things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean you're, some noble individual. It could be, but it's not guaranteed. It's. Um, so you have to answer that for yourself, by looking at what you're doing, and you're having some kind of awareness of how you interact with the world.
I also hope that all those things that you said you are not are the result of you having compassion for all beings, whether they're
Good point.
stupid and
Yes.
do horrible things, or whether they're a little bit more in control of their afflictive emotions, etc. I hope in my heart that what you've described is a state of having compassion, equanimity, equanimous compassion, and that is the ultimate bodhicitta, to all sentient beings, without judgment, without holding back on the love, without conceptuality, without binding them in any way, because of course, we're deeply flawed. But our teachers still love us, and I hope you have the love in your heart like our teachers have for us.
What can we do in the moment of intense situations? What can we do to take a pause even if we feel like we can't? Even if this means in just our minds, how can we stop ourselves from internally shutting down? It's easy to go meditate or journal or take time after an argument, after an intense conversation, after something happens. Before going into fight or flight mode, does Buddhism or even meditation teach us anything we can do in the moment? Yeah, but this also comes from practice, Um, practice, practice takes time, or making progress takes time and commitment. Um, and it's not going to come just from hearing a teaching and intellectual understanding of it. It comes from trial and error. It comes from daily practice. It comes from, more and more infusing the teachings into your life, more and more making space for the teachings and making space for the practice, more and more realizing how this is your nourishment and how important it is. It's not just a side thing. It's not just a little thing once in a while. It's just not just another wellness modality to make you feel better. That it becomes a bigger part of how you relate to the world. Um, Intense situations, fight or fly, heavy emotions, it's very difficult, even if you are practicing for quite a long time.
Sure.
But what does Buddhism or even meditation teach us anything? Yeah, what it teaches can help in that moment, but what it teaches has to be practiced and integrated, hearing, pondering, and meditating on the teachings. It's not just like, you know, uh, we live in a world where we feel like a lot of people hear something like a nugget of, there's always these slogans. I can't even remember one off the top of my head, just do it, or, be here now, things like that. It's like, just because you agree with something or you never heard this idea before and it makes a lot of sense, that doesn't mean you've now integrated that into your mind, your mechanism, your way of being, which is really dominated by habitual tendencies, karmic imprints. you know that kind of change takes uh, a lot of work and a lot of time. So we have to be patient with ourselves, and often we have to learn by the wisdom comes from suffering, from mistakes, from a situation where you realize you behaved in a way that you regret. But it takes wisdom to know that, right? Because in the past you might have said, I did that because I was justified and that person pushed my button and they deserved this. Well, then you get some teachings and you practice a bit and you're like, that person pushed my buttons, but I didn't have to respond that way. I could have responded plan B. And that would be more in line with how I want to behave and what I'm learning and what I'm saying. But that takes practice, and it often takes making mistakes, and it takes rigorous honesty with ourselves.
It also takes a lot of intention. In other words, when we want to write our own movie, we set our intention before we go out in the world. That's why practice in the morning is very, very recommended, because you do an aspiration of being such and such a being, such and such a person. You vow to yourself, you commit to bringing only benefit and being good in the world. Now, when you're standing in front of a person who's afflicted, who's like on fire, and you can recall your intention of embracing everything in the world with wisdom, when you stand in front of that person, you won't be as easily triggered to say horrible words or act badly, because you will remember and bring your intention there. You will have patience and you will have perseverance. On the other hand, like that lecture that I quoted earlier, that trauma is not stored in the brain or the body, in our physicality. The trauma is projected. When we say, when we're having a recurrent experience of difficulty, whether we go in the office or it's with our parent or with our child, we are already projecting that difficulty before we even step in. We could be traveling on the train to see a difficult parent, what we call a difficult parent. We're already projecting the situation in which we walk in. And we walk into our projection and we get triggered by it. So very, very important. Buddhism gives us a lot of methods to deal, first of all, dismantling our own projection. Second of all, dismantling what comes from the other side in terms of perception. If you are standing in front of a difficult person, you take a moment and you say the four immeasurables. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you be never separated. If you can do that, if you can take that moment of having silence, the discipline of holding back on just being triggered and exploding, if you can have the discipline of silencing your speech and saying that, or you can have the discipline of using Tonglen and projecting, taking that difficult speech like this, like a web or an illness, and bringing it into your heart, and then in your heart visualizing white luminous light, and breathing out. So on your inhale, you take the difficult dark stuff that comes from that person. You take that energy of illness, of mental illness, because that's what it really is, and you can dissolve it in your heart and project back onto them, and only then speak and act. We have lots of different means and methods, absolutely, but everything will first start with intentionality of knowing, I don't want to go through life like this, as this ordinary, what I've done before, of just this being triggered, going back and forth and things like this. I'm going to be this actor in this movie, and I won't let anyone sway me or push me off of this track, because that's what a practitioner is. You set your intention and you go into the world with that mindset, and you maintain that mindset. There are many, many, many methods. 84,000 methods were given by Buddha Shakyamuni to account for 84 negative mental states, because the 5 afflictive emotions make up that many negative mental states in their different combinations.
Was a YouTube training you mentioned from Zonso Khyentse Rinpoche on Siddhartha's Intent live stream channel, November 17th, 2023. Yes, correct. Last question. I took refuge as a young boy, 5 years old. This was with the 16th Karmapa, who was wonderful and amazing. Although I'm very grateful for this life experience, which you should be, because he was a sublime being, and the fact that you made that karma connection and did something as auspicious as take refuge with him is really in my opinion, something to be grateful for and something very, very special. My question is, should refuge be retaken over again throughout life, especially as an adult? I've never done this since being a young child. Or is it best to only do this once? That's up to you, and your level of inspiration, with a teacher. I mean, if you absolutely can take refuge more than once. And the fact that you've taken as a boy, you may, as an adult now, being in a different place, approaching the teachings, practicing in a different way, you may feel you want to, do it as an adult with this mind, uh, this motivation, which might be different than when you were 5, which I'm sure it is. And if you find a teacher in particular that inspires you enough to take refuge with her or him, sure. Not essential. Having that refuge connection with the 16th Karmapa is plenty, but it's up to you. It's up to you, and how inspired you are. So absolutely nothing in opposition to that. Totally permissible.
Many masters have refuge from many masters.
Sure.
Also, I wanted to just say, a refuge has, as everything we should view in life, has 3 aspects: outer, inner, and secret. The outer refuge, taking refuge in our teachers, because they connecting with them connects us to the inner refuge, taking refuge in the Dharma. The teaching is the medicine, so the doctor can give you the medicine, and it's up to us to take the medicine, not just to hold it in our medicine cabinet. And the secret refuge, as our teacher Garchen Rinpoche always said, your true refuge is taking it into your refuge with your Buddha nature. And the teachers, through giving us Dharma, the medicine, teach us how to meet that state face to face. Take the secret refuge into our Buddha nature. And that's very, very meaningful. So, and is available to us all the time, even when the outer refuge with the teacher is not available right now. But taking refuge into the Dharma and the secret refuge into our Buddha nature is always there. Needless to say, it is always good to meet a master, a doctor, who can connect us to the medicine, and then we can take it and have the experience of healing, meaning that we need that secret refuge face-to-face experience with our Buddha nature.
When you're given a formal practice by a teacher, whether it be Nondro, if you're doing Vajrayana, or just when you really start to practice through the instructions of a teacher, you take refuge every time you practice. You take refuge in the 3 jewels, in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So it can be a daily thing. It's not necessarily with a teacher in person or something, but repeating the vows, that a teacher gives you, but as a part of practice, it's very important, actually, very central. What's the name of the documentary? Someone asked, with the nun.
We'll post it next time. I have to I have to look at it. I don't remember it.
Let's dedicate the merit generated from today's session for the benefit of all beings by saying the dedication prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thanks for coming today. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick,
our producer. We'll see you next week.